Hello, everybody. My name is Remington, so I am the design manager, and I do the project management here at Stone Mill as well. So if you ever get started with us, or some of you already are, we're going to become close friends over the process. So hope you're prepared to listen to me talk for quite a while, and I'm ready to get started. So basically, if everybody can see my screen, I hope you can. We will kind of go through this. The whole thing is planning for your log or timber home. And if you feel like I'm not looking at you, I'm looking at the screen that you guys are seeing. I have multiple screens, so I promise I'm not looking at you. I'm looking over here. So we'll just kind of jump right in. This is a hot topic. Everybody starts somewhere, and this is the most exciting and probably fun process of designing a home. So, and there's a lot of ifs and questions and just sort of things to consider, because, you know, when it's just you armed with your graph paper, there's a lot of stuff you might not even know really where to start. So this is kind of what this is going to be about, is to sort of help you think of things you might not. The very first thing is property, because you can't really do anything without a piece of property. And because of that property, what's going to happen, it's going to kind of almost pick the home for you, or the style of home for you. The picture that I've used to illustrate here, you can clearly see is very common around our area. You know, if you're building down here in East Tennessee, you're going to get most likely a mountain lot or a lake lot. And you can see this one has a great big slope to it. So that basically means that this house should probably be on a basement. You know, if you have a nice flat lot, you're going to most likely end up with a crawl space. But your property is going to help determine so many things about your home. It's going to determine the overall size, because basically with every piece of property, you're going to have setbacks and easements and things like that, where you can bring in utilities, where you can bring your driveway in, how far back off the property line do you have to be. And that's really going to ultimately tell you how much home you can put on your lot. So, you know, like the Cottonwood, for example, which is a home that's about 90 feet wide. You know, if you have a piece of property and the front of your property is only 100 feet wide, well, by the time you factor in your setbacks, you can't fit that on your lot. You know, if you have to run your driveway in from the side, or you may have to change the orientation of how you come into your home. So there's lots of things that your property is going to dictate for you, basically. Everybody sees floor plans and they get excited about floor plans, but I always say don't necessarily fall in love with one completely until you've had a chance to kind of walk your property and really examine what you can actually fit on there, because that's happened far too many times, where people will fall in love with a plan, get it out there, stake it out on their property, and realize that it's not going to fit the way that they want, and then they have to make some major adjustments or completely change horses midstream. So always be kind of looking at your property first, and then determine maybe like a handful of plans that could fit and be suited for that property. So when we talk about the slope a little bit here, you know, again, if your property lends itself to a basement, do a basement, because that is a great place to get cheap square footage, double your living space. You know, you're going to be putting that money in the infrastructure anyway to have that support there. So it just makes logical sense to go ahead and finish out a good portion of it if you're trying to get extra bedrooms, or like a bonus room or something like that, or a garage, that if you're going to have to put the basement in, utilize that space, because it's cheaper square footage at that point. You may pick a plan that has a second story, but you're on a very sloped lot and you want to control the cost. So maybe you take that second story and you move it down into your basement, basically. You can have almost kind of a similar plan, but you're working within the confines of your property. The last bullet point here is, depending on where you buy, a lot of times if you're building in a development, you're going to have covenants and restrictions, like an architectural review committee or some kind of board that may require you to do certain things or build a certain way. So always kind of be mindful of that when you're purchasing a piece of property. If they have guidelines, be sure to look those over pretty thorough and make sure you're cool with everything that they're asking you to do before you go ahead and purchase the property. That's been a big headache a lot of times over the years. people aren't fully aware of what restrictions they have when they purchase a piece of property and they get into the approval process and they're required to change or alter things about their design that they really don't want to do, or they have to enlarge their footprint, which increases the budget that they weren't planning for. Things like that, that just, always be watching out for what kind of guidelines the development is trying to set for you. Moving on. So functionality, kind of like what type of home. So the very first thing that's going to determine the size of your home is the number of bedrooms that you're going to need. Everything is sort of built around that. You don't want to have a massive 5,000 square foot home with 2 bedrooms. So you really need to be thinking about how many bedrooms ultimately will you need? And that's sort of driven by the primary purpose of the home. If you look down there, are you downsizing? Is this a retirement home? Is it just a vacation home? Are you looking at it as an income or a rental property? All very different types of homes. The majority of the business that we see building log cabins, this is usually for most people, it's a second home or a retirement home. So most of the time we're looking at people who are downsizing. Sorry, go back. Looking at people who are downsizing or, kind of working into retirement. So often you'll take the typical family that's, you're looking to be, this is your primary home in retirement. And then you may have kids or grandkids that are coming to stay with you 3, 4, 5 times a year, kind of at the holidays or for special functions. You don't need a whole lot of space. So you want to be thinking, how big of a house do I ultimately need? And that sets the size, which then ultimately sets your budget. So, and if you're looking at things like a vacation home, the needs for that home are going to be different than a retirement home. So retirement home, you're going to be there full time. You may want to be thinking about having all of your necessities on the main level, your bedroom, the kitchen, the living room, all that being on like the main level, and having maybe 3-foot doors in case, there's something unfortunate or unforeseen may happen down the road and you need, accessibility. And then kind of like a vacation home, it may not matter. You may have a great view at your vacation home and you may want your bedroom on the top floor because you have a great view. It's just different things, different functions of the home will kind of determine what style of home that you need to build. Let's see here. This is probably one of the bigger things, is the personality of the home. And this is where we can easily spend the most time. But, if you look at this picture, this home, I feel like has a certain personality to it. It's easygoing, it's lake living, it's kind of, laid back, and you can see here they have a lot of outdoor living space. And so this is the number one thing with the personality of the home. And a lot of these features that are listed is most of the things that I see people desire today. They would like an open floor plan, an open concept. Years ago it was different. 20, 30 years ago, it was long hallways and separate rooms and everybody had different things, but open concept and sort of a greater open kind of space and flowing indoor to outdoor. That's really been the dominant theme of the past 15 to 20 years. Excuse me. So when we talk about open concept, well, what does that mean? That's having all of your common spaces kind of flow together. They're not divided by walls. They're not divided by, separate corridors that, you think, well, lines of sight is a good thing. You want to be standing in your kitchen and talk to somebody in your great room. You want to be talking to somebody in your dining room. Maybe you have like a breakfast room, or all these kind of areas sort of flow together. When you walk into the home, you want to kind of get that sense of grandeur, like, oh, wow, this is really open and spacious. And, ultimately it's your furniture that ends up kind of dictating the rooms for you. So open concept really just kind of mostly refers to the common areas. Something else to consider for a lot of folks, that if you are looking at something like a retirement home, is a split bedroom concept. That's become more and more popular with probably my generation. Like you would have the master bedroom on one side of the house or on one level, and then you have guest bedrooms or kids bedrooms on the other side of the house. Because if you if you have company coming to stay with you for a few days and, you know, it's your kids and then they got the grandkids, you know, like you don't want all that noise in the same spot when you're trying to go to bed, or you may wake up at different times, you know, or they may wake up earlier than you. And so having a split bedroom thing has become more and more popular because everybody gets to kind of go off into their own separate space without the homeowners being too disturbed by whatever else is going on. You know, somebody won't go to sleep in the middle of the night, or they got to get up or want a midnight snack. It's not going to affect the other people too much. Desired features of the home. Again, that's going to change the footprint quite a bit. Outdoor living space is probably one of the number one things that I've seen increase in desire for people over the past 20 years. Gone are the days of having just a little small covered entry or a little small porch or an open deck. You know, people really, really want to see a large communal outdoor space, and you know, I've seen a lot of folks want it to gravitate. They want the indoors to flow to the outdoors, and they want to be able to swing the doors wide, you know, when it's nice outside, and just have the spaces kind of flow together. And it's great for entertaining. It's great for just relaxing, just to have that sense of like indoor, outdoor. So there are ways to take advantages of that with the plans that you pick. You know, you can look at how can we start looking at getting the indoor space to flow into the outdoor space. And that can greatly alter the style and footprint of the home. You can't see it in this picture here, but you know, if you can see my mouse sort of behind this big old tree, there's a huge outdoor covered porch here. And that is an extension of the great room just behind it. So when they walk into this home out here in the back, you know, they have this big old great room, and then they have this porch that's just an extension. The roof lines continue out, so they can swing those doors open on a nice spring or fall day and basically double their space, and they can sit out there and really feel cozy while still being under the confines of the roof line and the footprint of the home. Outdoor living space has become an extremely, extremely important thing, and a more requested feature. And the other things that will sort of determine what rooms do you plan on using the most? This is a lot of this kind of ties into the kitchen. That seems to be the biggest thing that separates folks. You got those who don't really care about having a nice kitchen. They may not be big cooks. They just, you know, that's just not something that they do. And then you have other people, they have big family gatherings. They spend all their time in the kitchen. Everybody's standing around the kitchen island, you know, so like be thinking about in this next home, what are you going to use the most? Where's that one space? You know, if you've walked your property and you think I've got a great view off this way, or I want to be looking at the lake over that way, what are you going to put in your plan that will take advantage of that? You know, we're doing one up in Pennsylvania here in a couple of weeks, and they built a little like a little jut out on their plan for a little sitting area with a little fireplace. It's like a reading nook, because there's a nice little area that the wife wanted to just sit there and look out and just feel warm and cozy. So think about those kind of things, about what space do I want to put in my home that's kind of just for me. That is a personality thing. You're gonna use your great room a bunch. You're gonna use your living room. You know, try and make sure that that's oriented on the property some way that you're gonna enjoy it. You're gonna enjoy sitting down in your chair and feeling comfortable, looking at something or being reminded of something. So it's, you know, or are you gonna spend a lot of time in your bedroom? I mean, maybe you want like a sitting area in your bedroom. There's so many different things that really tie directly to your personality and the things that you want to see in this home. I mean, you know, this is the opportunity where, you know, sure, you might be starting from a floor plan that someone else has drawn, but you have the ability to modify it, to take it and make it yours. And this is you may only do this once in your life. So you need to really think about the personal aspects of what you want and things you enjoy, and putting that into your floor plan somehow. You know, if you love to paint, maybe you find a space for a studio. If you love photography, you need to work in a space for like a dark room or something like that. You know, and that kind of ties into the next bullet point of about like a home office space. Remote work is becoming a more and more prevalent thing in today's workforce. Or you might be kind of easing into semi-retirement and you're still doing some consulting or working from home or whatever. You know, home office space didn't used to be a thing. Now it's a thing. So you don't want to take up bedroom that you might need for a child or a grandchild for an office. You may want to build in like what they call it nowadays is like a flex room. That's a term that a lot of realtors would be familiar with. You see in a lot more of these floor plans pop up with little flex rooms. They're multi-purpose rooms. They can be a craft room, they can be a photography studio, they can be a home office, something built in for the idea that if you have to get some work done, you're not taking over another space and having your laptop and your stuff like all over your kitchen counter or on a side table in the living room with all this clutter. Like you've got a space dedicated to being able to get some work done so that you can go in there, get it done, turn around and leave when it's over, and you don't feel like you're encroaching on your other areas of the home. So, fancy kitchen, I kind of touched on that earlier. Again, that's kind of a 50-50 thing. I grew up with a chef for a dad, so having a big fancy kitchen is always going to be on my must-have list. Any home that I live in or will eventually design for myself is going to have a really big, spacious kitchen, lots of counter space, lots of cabinets, lots of storage, lots of room for people to come in and mingle and gather. And it's just one of those things that kitchens really take up. They can take up as much room as they need to, or they can take up way more room than you think that they need to. If it's just strictly a functional kitchen, then you stick to your triangle, your little work triangle that everybody talks about, and you only need enough counter space just to get the job done. But if a lot of you folks are like me, you've got people coming over and you're cooking big meals every once in a while, you need to have room to stage, you need to have room to work, you need to have room for people to stand around and talk and gather, and you need about 1.5 to 2 times the size of a small kitchen if you're going to be entertaining or cooking a lot like that. So when I say fancy kitchen, what I'm probably really saying is big kitchen. So, and the last item on personality, and this kind of goes back to what I was saying a few minutes ago about personal touches. You're going to have to decide on the things that are a must-have in your home, and then plan for compromises. When you start to get a plan on paper and you start to go get numbers and you get a budget and it may end up over budget, you're going to have to decide what stays and what goes. Being able to plan for that on the front end will probably save you a lot of heartache on the back end. But going into it with the mindset of, well, I'd really love to have a home office, but I don't have to have a home office. If it comes down to it and you got to cut it, then you can cut it, but you say, what, I absolutely have to have this, this little breakfast nook over here. That's just a non-negotiable for me. It helps you get, like I'd say, get that list of must-have versus like need versus want. It's probably a better term. I need to have these things. I would like to have these other things over here. And if something comes in over budget, or it won't fit on the property, or won't fit within the confines of the structure that we have to have, then you can start deciding what gets to go. So common mistakes when designing your own plan. This is the good stuff. So I have several things. A couple of them I'm going to touch on individually. One of them is wall thickness. You can see here, I quickly sketched out on graph paper, which is a very helpful tool. Just sort of a basic floor plan. And you sort of jot down general room sizes. I would like my kitchen to be a certain size, my dining room to be a certain size. And then you've picked a plan that you can see here is, 40 feet long. Okay, well, let's come down here and let's actually lay it out, and let's put it into, AutoCAD. And you can see here on this dimension string down at the bottom, I've got a 40-foot dimension on the outside, but the log wall is 6 inches thick on both sides. And then we've got all these dividing walls between the bathrooms, the utility room, the mud room. Suddenly, over the course of 5 or 6 walls, it's added up to a total of 2 feet. And you've lost 2 feet out of the width of your whole home. That's something that happens a lot. I would say every 2 out of 3 times, folks will come back to us and say, well, I don't understand why, this room is only 9 feet wide when I said I wanted 10. And we as designers have to sort of pick and choose and help you guys talk through that stuff and say, well, you lose the thickness of the walls. You lose space here, you lose space there because of this and because of that. And we try to make our best educated guesses. We say, okay, well, I would rather have that space in the kitchen and maybe take a little bit out of the pantry, but then you may come back and say, well, I'd rather have it in my bathroom. So that's something to always be very mindful of. It's great to get stuff sketched out on graph paper, but as you can see, a pencil mark does not necessarily represent the true thickness of a 2x4 or a 2x6 wall. So over the course of 40 feet, you're going to lose, and this is just a standard example. There are plans that could have 5 or 6 more walls than this, just depending on how much division that you want and how the floor plan lays out. I would just say always be mindful of when you sketch something out on paper, if it's a 40-foot wide dimension, plan for less than that on the inside, so that you're not, when you get your first round of plans, you're not just completely shocked. You can see I wrote down 8 by 10 on this bathroom, but by the time I get everything in here, it's really about 6 feet wide, because I got to make sure that I maintain enough space here for the washer and dryer, and then coming in from the back, I wanted to make sure that I have enough space to come in the mudroom, and I didn't want my kitchen to be any smaller than it already is. So it's just planning for the compromise and understanding that you are going to lose space when laying out your home. The next one is stairs. Stairs are always a challenge. And I think they're going to become an increasing challenge because over the years, stairs have to be built by a set of rules. Your brain is really awesome at helping you stick with the stairs as you go up and down. That's why the code books only allow so much variance in step per step. They really want uniformity as you go up. Everybody's probably walked up and down a set of stairs to where maybe when you get all the way up here to the top, it feels a little bit taller, or when you get down to the bottom, it feels like a bigger drop. Your brain is already done the calculation in your head for you. It thinks, okay, every step is supposed to be, just the same. And then you get down to the bottom and it's a little bit taller and you kind of stumble a little bit. So that's kind of the reason why the code exists. It's because it's to help protect you, basically. So your max riser height, as they call it, from one to the next, can be 7 3/4. And that's been pretty universal probably over the past 20 some odd years. The nosing right here, the 10 inches is what we call that. That's the flat part where your foot goes. That has changed over the years. I've seen that go from 8 to 9 to now 10. And you got to think, if you're adding an inch over, 15, 16 steps, well, suddenly you're adding, a foot and a half over the entire run of your stairs just to try and keep up with code. So things to be mindful of when you design your stairs is that they are wider than you think, they're longer than you think, you need more head clearance than you think. And when I say wide, I mean you've got to maintain a 3-foot wide space all the way up and down. And you were allowed to have like a grab rail to encroach upon that, but nothing else. You need a 3-foot clear space. So that's pretty wide. You've probably all been in homes that are older that the stairs are pretty narrow, the treads are not very deep, and the risers are pretty tall. And they're always longer than you think. And the reason that they're longer is mostly because of this increase in the tread depth that we've seen over the years. It's my favorite thing is when we get a sketch, kind of from somebody on graph paper, and they've drawn maybe 6 or 7 steps kind of loosely in there showing, to get to the second floor. And then we go in there and lay everything out to code, and we've had to use, 14 or 15 steps and take up, 2 or 3 times the amount of room that they had budgeted for the stairs. And you can see that, in a smaller footprint, that would just completely kill your whole plan. So I always caution people to say, build in a ton of room for your stairs. I would rather you build in too much and then be pleasantly surprised that you have room to spare than have to come back and realize that we need more room for your steps, and like your master bedroom has to get smaller because we can't get upstairs. That's just that's just something to think about. And also the last point on stairs is if you do have multiple levels, obviously the best thing to do is to stack your staircases with one's on top of the other. That is the most efficient use of space. So the only thing to consider is, once again, if your basement stairs, if you're going down to a basement and they have to be 3 feet wide, now your upstairs stairs have to get even wider to cover those stairs, if that makes sense. So it's just, they always take up way more space than you think. So those past two items, wall thickness and stairs, are probably the biggest obstacles that we run into and have to go back to clients and explain, here's why this didn't work out the way that you had in your mind. Those are probably the top two reasons that I see. So. Other overlooked items, these are just things to kind of jot down and keep in mind. So I've shared this picture here for a very good reason. Furniture placement. When you're laying out your floor plan, you've taken all these things into consideration. You know, I have this great view on my property. I want my living room looking this way. I would like my dining room looking that way. I want my bedroom looking that way. So then you start thinking about, well, I need windows everywhere. Well, consider your furniture placement too. For example, this home, and I remember working with her very specifically, you know, this home is actually on a beach, facing the beach. So this door right here goes out to the beach. And on the opposite wall of this bed is the door coming into the bedroom. And the door, and to the right is the door to the bathroom. So she was very limited on where she could place her bed. And you don't want to stick a couple of windows right here and then have to stick your bed in front of a window. So what she had chosen to do, and this is kind of a really cool feature, is you have what we call like a transom window. You have these long, narrow windows. They still let in a lot of great light, and you can stick your bed underneath, and you're not really encroaching on wall space. And if you are somebody who likes to rearrange from time to time, or at least keep your options open, you know, when you place windows, everybody likes to think about symmetry on the outside. I want it to look good, but also consider your furniture placement on the inside. You may have this whole window configuration in your mind about how you want the outside to look because it's pretty and it's symmetrical, but then you go inside and it's like, well, I have nowhere to put my dresser, or I don't know where I'm going to put my TV or my couch. And if I ever wanted to rearrange, I can't because I'm stuck with the one configuration that I have. So I know that seems like it's thinking way, way, way down the road, and it is, but that's just something to kind of be mindful of. You know, when you're laying out your rooms, be thinking about which your traffic flow and how you're going to place your furniture, because you don't want to like strap yourselves into a corner and never be able to rearrange if you ever felt like it, or you don't have the wall space if you wanted to add another piece of furniture or take one away. It's just, I just say be mindful of all that. Not enough storage. Even though a lot of you folks might be downsizing, part of downsizing is purging, but you always find that we just accumulate stuff over the years, and you know, maybe you'll get to offload some of that stuff from your attic to your kids or other relatives, and as my parents have done to me. But just there's lots of great ways to build in storage. You know, as designers, we always try to, if we come across any dead space in a plan, we'll try to work in and make that like a, you know, a closet or some kind of like chase or something to, you know, because there's nothing worse to a designer than having dead space. So we're always trying to think about, you know, traffic flow and like kind of the ergonomics of the home. But storage is a complaint that I often hear, and you're going to find more of that with a log or timber home because everything is exposed. In a conventional home, it's easy to, you know, everything is stud framed and you're slapping drywall up over everything and it's all covered up. You got flat ceilings. You can build in storage, you know, up in the attic. With a timber frame or a log cabin, you may have a really nice vaulted timber ceiling. Well, you can't put storage in there. So you got to be thinking about other places you can build in storage. If you do end up with a basement, that's a great option, because not everybody needs a whole second level replicated on the lower level. So you partition off some of your basement and make that for storage. But you know, there's plenty of opportunities, and that's something I would say when you maybe get your first round of floor plans drawn up, and you start talking with somebody like a designer, be asking that question, be thinking about storage. You may not have as much stuff anymore when you downsize, but you're still going to have, you know, your seasonal decorations, or, you know, if you live at the lake or the beach or something, you may have a ton of lake gear, you know, that you need to store somewhere. I mean, there's stuff. There's always stuff to think about. So, not considering resale. That's, you know, we've seen some folks come in, and again, these are most of the time, these are custom homes. So they're, we talked a lot about designing the home to fit your personality, which is extremely important. But then there's also such a thing as going too far overboard, to where, eventually this home is going to be passed down to somebody else, maybe somebody in the family, maybe they don't want it. Maybe they're going to try and turn around and sell it, and they can't because it's too strange, it's too cut up, it's too unique, it has too many odd features about it that just, there is such a thing as going kind of too overboard. Now, at the end of the day, it's your home. You can do whatever you want to do, but I would be thinking about, like, gosh, like, one day this home is going to be passed down to my kids, and what if they don't want to live there, and then they can't get rid of it because we've done something really strange that everybody finds weird. So, which kind of ties into the next point there. Again, this is your home. You got the final say so, but this is a place where you're going to be gathering with family and friends. It doesn't hurt to get their input. Some of them may have their own experiences from designing or building a home, or they may know somebody who's done the same. They might have some constructive criticism and things that you might not have thought of. The ultimate goal is to try and head off a lot of those things about, you don't want to be sitting in the home going, I wish we would have done this, or we should have done that instead of this. That's kind of what using your family and friends as a sounding board is for. They may feel really, really passionate about making sure you add 2 more feet of deck over here on this save, because I think it'd be great to eventually put a hot tub here one day, and you haven't even thought of that. So it's always good to reach out and get outside opinions. That's probably a really good one. I have seen a lot of projects get squashed because they start with an idea, and then it just grows out of control. Everybody has a budget. Nobody has an unlimited budget. But you see something on paper, and then maybe it doesn't meet your expectations, and you think, oh, I'd love to just add 6 more feet to this great room, or push this wall out another couple of feet. Those are the types of things I'd say, just be mindful every time you make a change to the footprint or the roof lines or the heights of things. You are probably significantly altering the costs. And I always like to have that as a nuanced kind of conversation. We see that a lot in our business, a whole heck of a lot. Somebody says, hey, I want to add 2 feet to my plan. It's like, okay, well, before we commit to that, like, let's talk about what that will add to your budget, so that you can make a better educated decision before you do that. Because I've just seen it happen too many times where we alter the plans for someone, and then they go out and they get a revised estimate, and then they come back and say, well, never mind, we can't afford that. Can we go back to the way that it was? Which is why we like to do a lot of save as when we start working on a new file, just to make it easier for everybody. So. Lastly, not consulting a professional, a little bit of a sales pitch, but if you look at, I kind of use these pictures as an example. This home, the pictures of this home came from this plan. So it's really all about kind of the cohesion, the value of talking to a professional. And it doesn't, and I'm not talking strictly about us, but when you start thinking about designing your home, you probably know someone or know somebody who knows someone who is within the industry. Ask them questions. People have done that to me all the time. Friends and family, will send me a private message and say, hey, we're thinking about designing a home. Do you have any tips? Yes, I do. I have tons of them. So it always helps to kind of do exactly what we've done today. It's just sit down and really just ask somebody, pick their brain about what are the kind of the big things that we shouldn't miss. What things should we consider, and have that conversation, because they're the folks who do it all day long. They may open your eyes to some things you've never thought about. So yeah, I guess that's it. And we now will open the floor to questions. Dawn, is that, shake your head? Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I had to unmute myself. Okay, so we do have a question from Rick. He's asked about the stairs.
Yes.
So you talked about how the stairs, you kind of had an example of a straight line run there. Mm-hmm. What if there is a landing and it turns and it goes up? How do you accommodate for that?
So that's a great question, and it kind of just depends on the plan. Something that we see all the time is stairs with landings. That's probably more common than a straight run staircase, honestly, especially in the smaller footprints. The it's the L shape, as we call it. And if you can bear with me for half a second, I may just open up a file and let you all take a look at something. Let's see here. Hope everybody can still see my screen. So here is the classic L-shaped staircase. So that is that, like I said, you're going to see that a lot of times. You're going to come up here, you're going to have a landing, sometimes with a winder, because the challenge, as you can see here, this is kind of this is the girder of the home. This is where the stairs need to end, because your hallway is here, so we can't be bringing those stairs and kind of encroaching into that hallway. So we've got, and the front door is here, we've got a finite amount of space that we need to get up these stairs, and this is where an L-shaped staircase is a great thing. So the challenge then becomes, when we talk about the clearance, and I can kind of go back to the hang on, bear with me, to the PowerPoint real quick and show you the clearance. Let's see here. So here, you notice I put 6'8" right here in this blue line that goes right through here. That is also a code. You have to maintain 6'8" as a minimum. So what that does is it creates a challenge. This here is that this represents like the top log, in a standard kind of story and a half. And this green line represents a rafter coming down and bearing on that. So the challenge becomes getting up the stairs basically at this landing. You got to think your roof is sloping down towards this wall right here, this front wall. So you've got to get up so many stairs and start turning back towards the middle to make sure, that you get up and turn and still have proper head clearance, if that makes sense. So there's always like a challenge with stairs to get them to function within the confines of all the code requirements and the space available. And it's more challenging in smaller plans, of course. But a lot of what cabins are is small and cozy, and it's probably one of the more challenging aspects of our job is getting stairs to fit. Next.
Okay, so the next question we have, and now this one's about cost. So I don't know if we'll be able to answer this one. It says, have you, in the recent uptick of building materials, has it affected the log and timber home industry for building costs, timing, financing, etc.?
I mean, it is less of a design question, but the short answer is yes. I can give a quick answer and move on. But the short answer is yes, it has affected. Like the larger timbers that we work with, it's affected those a little less so, because those are not as in demand as, say, conventional lumber is. So while our package prices have not skyrocketed like conventional lumber and like sheathing and all those types of things have, it's still upticked. We're like everybody else, we're hoping to kind of see that come back down and normalize itself, because with that, you're finding people are hesitating to move forward, just because they plan for a certain amount, and then the budget has skyrocketed beyond what they thought that it was going to be. So there's been a challenge, and I would say it's definitely slowed a lot of folks down, and we're just kind of working through it like everybody else. So
exactly. Okay, we do have another question on it says, have you ever used a standard wood framing with drywall on interior partitions and only have heavy timber construction for the shell and exterior, less heavy wood with a lighter interior? So yes, actually, I think that would be our timber framing.
Yes. So the fun part about what we typically provide, whether it's a log or a timber frame, like our scope can vary just based on your needs for the project. But let's take a standard log cabin, for instance. Let's take this one right here on my screen. We could sell you 4 log walls and everything else can be conventional if you really, really wanted it to. The more traditional approach with a cabin, of course, we'll take you to the framing plan. All the purple things right here, those are timber ceiling beams, and all the green things right here are rafters to give you that like timber ceiling and timber vaulted ceiling look. But honestly, the package is scalable, and I have that's probably one of the more enjoyable things. It's why we beg all of our clients to send us pictures. We love to see what you all do with the homes. I've seen homes where people put tongue and groove and board and batten and all just solid, all wood products all over the entire home. There's not a scrap of drywall anywhere. And then I've seen other people do the complete opposite. They'll dark stain their beams and they'll use drywall everywhere and create a really nice contrast. It's fascinating to see just what sort of creative inspiration comes from these things, and that's the really fun part of seeing all that. Hope I answered the question.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, I think that's true though. You can make it really kind of how you want. I mean, I've even seen some of our pictures we have with the whitewash logs really make it look brighter too. Let's see, Rick has asked, are your logs cured for 2 years before they're used to build?
They're not. And I'm probably not the most qualified person to answer that. I know that when we order them from the West Coast, they sit out there for a few months and air dry. And then of course they come over here where we keep them in stock nearby and we'll air dry for a few more months. So it's not like a minimal 2 years thing. It's just by the time it gets from the West Coast over to where we are, it's been several months and those things have had time to dry out plenty.
Yeah. Let's see, there's another question here. This one's from Jeff. Is there an optimal length to consider with log construction? For example, in conventional construction, you try to go with typical sizes that you can purchase to avoid waste.
Multifaceted answer, perhaps. We offer basically our whole shtick is square logs and dovetails. So we offer scalable sizes within that. We do our most common is a 6x12 log, and that's pretty common industry wide, honestly. And we offer like a 8x12 to kind of meet bigger energy requirements. But so as far as that's mostly on us, the home is what the home is, I guess. Now I know that, and this is maybe a better suited to be a sales question, but I know that there may be an option for, if we don't guarantee you a log length up to 40 feet, maybe we guarantee you like up to 20 feet or 24 feet or something like that. There is a cost difference to us. It costs us more to get longer logs. Again, like I said, it's probably a better question for your sales rep, but there could be a way to, if you don't care about having some more splices, log splices or joints on your exterior walls, to get those down to shorter lengths and maybe save some money.
And are the logs all 6 inches thick, or is there an option for a thicker 8-inch log with better thermal insulation?
So yeah, I briefly touched on that in the last one, but yeah, there absolutely is. So we, like I said, our standard 6x12 is the most common profile. That's probably 80 to 90% of what we do. But we actually created an 8-inch thick log years and years ago, like a profile for that, to sort of keep up with the stricter energy codes. And we, as a little touch on kind of energy, log homes they don't fit neatly within the code book. Everything is prescriptive. If you're building conventional home, they tell you a wall has to be R19 or a roof has to be R30 or whatever. You can't really do that with a log. A log is just what a log is. So, but the things that aren't accounted for in the code books are thermal mass. You can step into any modern log home and those things are just as efficient, if not more, than a conventionally built home. They're really great at retaining the heat, and they're so energy efficient. But the short answer is yes, we do offer an 8-inch thicker log for if it's kind of required, especially as you get up north with these harsher climates, climate zone 5 and 6 and whatnot. You may have to step up to a thicker log to get like a higher R value.
That's all the questions. Oh wait, no, we got another one coming in. Okay, on a standard 7 log wall, what is the inside wall height, accounting for chinking and a ceiling as in a kitchen under the loft?
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's a good question.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
So this one, for instance, you may have seen the 7 logs plus a 6x8 still. That's kind of a standard for a lot of our plans. So 7 logs plus our standard 6x8 sill is going to be 10 feet to the top of the log. Now, these floor joists actually sit on the 6 log course. And we'll go over here to the section view and I'll show you. So you can see here we've got our sill log, and then we have 7 log courses on top of that. So this right here, from this line up to this line, is 10 feet tall. So then we set our floor system on this 6 log here, and then you can see here from floor to floor, that dimension is 9'1.5" to the top of the tongue and groove floor. So basically to the bottom of the beam, you're going to be about 8'4". So if you're standing, like in this plan, for instance, you're standing in the kitchen, to the bottom of the beam, it's going to be about 8'4". And then, of course, now your beams are open, so they're spaced at, 2 or 2.5 feet on center. You're going to be able to look up and also see the bottom of the tongue and groove decking. So your true ceiling height is going to be more like 9 feet.
Okay, let's see if there's any other questions I missed. Oh no, we got another one come in. What's the general timeline once a person starts planning until a building is dried in?
Very good question. And the short answer is that really all depends on the client. As with any business, like our business, our schedule ebbs and flows depending on the sales volume at any given time and how many people we have in the queue. But I've seen it take as little as, I'd say 3 to 4 months. It's probably one of the fast ones I've seen, going from concept sketch to fully engineered plans. It's taken us as little as 3 months. I've seen people take 5, 6, 7 years. It's kind of all on your timeline. And that's part of what the project management services offer is once you get started with us, once you've contracted with us, we really try to work with you and your schedule and sort of kind of back into it. We'll say, like, when do you want to be in the home, or when do you want to break ground? And that way that gives us all like the kind of the proper sense of urgency. So, okay, I want to break ground next spring. Well, then, okay, we already need to be getting your plans wrapped up here in a couple months so that you can go out and you can get your permits, you can get people lined up to start excavating, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of moving parts and pieces, and it's just, the short answer is it's an ongoing discussion based on your timeline.
Sorry, I was on mute. Okay, we have a question on windows and doors. Are the windows and doors specs exact enough that these items could be ordered prior to the actual build?
Yes. So part of, we're a Pella dealer. So, when we draw the plans, unless you have told us specifically, like say the first round of plans, unless you told us every window you want to go in the house and where and what size, we will use our best judgment just from past experience. We'll put sizes in where code requires it to be a minimum size. And then otherwise, if you tell us, hey, my living room is going to be looking at a lake, I want a lot of windows, we'll just use our best judgment, and then we'll have a little bit of back and forth. But the short answer is, once you have enough kind of back and forth with the plans, and you've looked over the window sizes and everything like that, when you're dialed in, you're going to get to a point where, I'll tell you, hey, it's do or die time, like no more changes after this. Are you good? And then, like I said, when I mentioned that we're a Pella dealer, we'll walk you through that process if you choose to go through us and go through all the specs and everything. And then again, coordinate ordering the window and door package with the delivery of your home. So it's not like you have to be out there building and have everything in place and then place a window order. If you go through us, then we'll kind of help coordinate that. If you go through somebody else, on your own, then that's on you.
Are log homes, so someone's saying that log homes can be darker or more dimly lit than conventional home. Does our plans adjust to add more indoor lighting?
Yeah, and so that's something that I will say a long time ago I would have agreed. Just in my time in this industry, I've been doing this since 2004. The reason that cabins were so dark back in the day, and everybody has this vision of log homes being dark, naturally wood is not a reflective surface. That's a large part of it. So we always felt like, stick a window here, stick a window there. The challenge with log homes has always been to add more glass is more cost, and then there's always the uncertainty of, the structural aspect of it. That's far less of an issue these days, as codes have gotten better and engineering thing. Short answer is way cooler than it used to be. We're way ahead of where we used to be. Engineers are way ahead of where they used to be. And window and door products are 10 times better than what they used to be. So getting more windows and more natural light into these homes has never been easier. And then as far as the interior lighting, that's when we start talking about making allowances for, I've seen people do great things like put little track lights on the rafters above just for some like accent and ambient lighting. Planning for that stuff ahead of time is a great way to help offset that. So you can get a ton of natural light in log homes these days. It's pretty easy to do, especially with us, because that's actually wrapped up in the package. If you go through us, we engineer the plans. So you can stick as much glass as you want to anywhere, knowing that at some point it's going to get engineered and it's going to be decided how you can or cannot accomplish that. And then the other piece of it is planning to add like ambient lights and accent lights, kind of like you would with a normal home. I've seen some people do some really cool things with that.
Okay, we have some more window and door questions. So if we go through stone mill to get the Pella windows and doors, do we install them? And then also on the window topic, is there a possibility of working shutters on the outside to close up the home for the season? We've actually built some homes that were in hurricane zone. So,
Yep.
Yeah.
So for the first question, if you get windows and doors through us, do we install them? No, we do not install them. We'll let the local rep do that, the local Pella person do that. And the reason for that is, we always we say it jokingly, but you don't want the guys out there swinging sledgehammers and driving rebar and hanging huge timbers also being the people putting in your windows and doors. That's not a skill set that they are really great at. So we kind of leave that to the window installers, the professional window installers. Now, if there's ever an issue, like if you purchase through us, we will own that issue. That is the value that Stone Mill adds in that case. So, and then speaking of windows, shutters, yes, it is. The window is yes.
So we mentioned whitewash logs. Is this an interior finish that is applied after dry-in? Yes.
Yeah.
It would be. Yeah, we actually just had a photo shoot at one of our past clients' homes down in South Carolina, in which those images will be coming out pretty soon to the public. But the interior has been whitewashed. It looks beautiful. So it'd be just like staining, putting on any kind of coating. We've seen people paint their logs too. I don't know.
Oh yeah. Yep.
If you wanted to, you could. Let's see. Is there any other questions, guys? We're getting close. We got like 6 minutes left. So if you can think of something, we'll pick Remington's brain. Let's see. I've heard some horror stories in getting windows and doors in. What has been your experience with Pella?
Mostly positive. And for you, Kevin, I would say, I can't remember who you're working with. Was it Gordon? Matthew here, who's worked with us, he's our vice president. He's been here for a long time. He is our most experienced window and door person to talk to. So I would say, if you get a chance, we'll put you two in touch. If you're having any kind of concerns or anything like that, I would say he's the guy that you could talk to about that might help set your mind at ease.
Yeah, and I think Matthew's on here as well, so he will know to. Yeah, I was looking through the list. I'm pretty sure Matthew's on here, so he can follow up with Kevin and talk about that.
Yeah. Okay, Rick, I see your question. The biggest concern with the log home is the log splitting as it dries. So a lot of that is eliminated before it even gets to your site. We grade everything that leaves this yard. Basically, we visually inspect everything, and we adhere to the grade book. Like if there are defects and things like that, if you can look at a piece of wood, like I'm not going to say with 100% accuracy, because wood is wood. It's wood misbehaves in all kinds of strange ways. But there are ways to grade a piece of wood and look at it and say, okay, that one is going to twist as it dries out, or that one's going to split, or that one's going to crack. And there are allowances that we are held to. We're held to a standard to how our material comes in. So when we get it, we look at it, we grade it, and there's plenty of stuff that gets culled and been pulled to the coal pile and used for either sent back or used for other purposes. Like that does not leave the yard. We might use it for scrap or to rip it into something more usable. But the short answer is the stuff that we send out of here is graded, it's quality. So, it's all within what is allowed per the grade book. You're always going to get seasonal checking. Checking is just the characteristics of logs. They're going to open up a little bit more in the summer and close up in the winter. That's normal. That's allowable. But if it's a split or a crack or something like that, that stuff gets culled before it gets turned into produced like material, if that makes sense.